These are the stories topping the news. Man killed in Sandy Point, another wounded. Clashes at University of Guyana over better pay and working conditions. And Jordan promises harsh response to killing of pilots by ISIL. Good afternoon and welcome to ZIZ's Midday Newscast for Wednesday, 4th February 2015. I am JD Keynes. Now for a look at the news in detail. 4 persons are in custody following the shooting death of Judgment Francis. Another man, Brian Wilkinson, was also wounded. Early Wednesday morning, the public relations arm of the police force confirmed that its violent crime unit is investigating a shooting incident which occurred on February 3, 2015, about 8:15 p.m. at Sandy Point. Initial investigations revealed that Judgment Francis, 26, and Brian Wilkinson, 21, were attacked by armed masked assailants while walking along an alley east of the Wesleyan Holiness Church. Francis succumbed to his injuries at the scene. The police are asking anyone with information pertaining to the shooting to call the Violent Crime Unit at 467-1886, 467-1887, 662-9336, the nearest police station, or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-8477. The Washington-based International Monetary Fund, IMF, has said that St. Kitts and Nevis has made a third payment ahead of schedule, reflecting an improvement in the country's economy. The IMF is quoted in a statement from the communications unit of the Office of the Prime Minister as saying St. Kitts and Nevis repaid ahead of schedule approximately $3.9 million obligations to the IMF on January 29th of this year. This is the third early repayment of St. Kitts and Nevis of the US $73.1 million borrowed under its standby arrangement approved by the IMF Executive Board in July 2011. The IMF disclosed that the first early repayment was made on June 24, 2014 for approximately US $17.1 million, while the second early repayment was made on October 30th, 2014 for approximately $4.1 million. These early repayments reflect the improvement in the country's macroeconomic situation, according to the IMF. The International Financial Institution disclosed that the third repayment covers a portion of the obligations falling due in the second half of 2015. This reduces the outstanding obligations of St. Kitts and Nevis to the IMF to about US $43.4 million and further lowers its debt to GDP ratio by about 0.5% of GDP to about 80%. Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, reminded the nation on a Tuesday morning of the great importance each vote has. Speaking on Ask the Prime Minister, Dr. Douglas encouraged everyone registered to turn out to vote on Election Day and added that their decisions on February 16th will determine the future of St. Kitts and Nevis.
The moment we have all looked forward to is fast approaching. And so in less than 2 weeks, we will go to the polls. In less than 2 weeks, on Monday, February the 16th, to be exact, we will perform a tiny task that will have huge consequences. In less than 2 weeks, in the privacy of polling booths all across the Federation, each of us will freely and joyously exercise that most precious of rights which Bradshaw, Southwell, France, and all the other fearless leaders of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party and movement fought so hard and won so decisively for us. That is the right to vote. And with that one simple act, we will determine whether St. Kitts and Nevis continues on the positive upward trajectory onto which my government has so securely placed us, or whether we will end up in a different and unknowable direction.
Dr. Douglas said St. Kitts and Nevis' status as a regional leader in respect of its economy, employment rate, direct foreign investment, and more would be in the hands of voters.
And let there be no doubt, what happens to our economy, what happens to our ranking compared to our Caribbean nations and the rest of the world, all of this will be determined by our vote.
Regionally, Students and workers of the University of Guyana continue to clash with the administration over negotiations for better pay and working conditions. As Royston Drakes reports, things become a bit bizarre on Tuesday when the Vice-Chancellor decided to picket for the workers to go back to work.
School was out at the University of Guyana as the wages and salary struggle intensified. The entrance to the university was closed to traffic. There was no easy access to those who were determined to go on the campus.
We know where your wife works. Knock it down. You want to do something? Knock it down. We ain't collect machine. Knock it down. We're not doing anything. We ain't collect machine. Come forward. You can't knock the entrance. We just did.
The police were called in to clear the entrance but left shortly after the staff and lecturers made known their position.
So the compound is inhumane. You can't, it's uninhabitable. The washrooms are stink. You can't use the washroom. Proper water, the toilet don't flush. It's a health hazard. So we're trying to help people's health.
Even the government body and university doing it. For the students, look at the president right there. So
we can't go in there and use the thing.
If the university was built for us, therefore what going to happen?
Yes,
we're
definitely.
Here. Yeah. So we choose to do this.
Then tension boiled over when the security for the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of Guyana gained entry to the campus with a firearm in his possession. It was when he ducked under the barriers to gain entry that the staff observed the weapon.
Some people more free than others. No firearms allowed on campus mean no firearms on campus. If the students are not allowed to change the gates, how they can come in with guns?
Sign clearly says all firearms must be locked. The guy walked with a firearm brandishing it. And we're having a peaceful protest. With the Deputy Vice-Chancellor and with the head of security walking with him.
While the protest was happening at the front of the campus, UG Vice-Chancellor was having a protest of his own at the UG Access Road. He said the university can give a minimal increase in salary. He's requesting that the lecturers be given house lots and duty-free concessions.
Right now there is no parliament to grant any new subvention. But from the money we have, we could be able to afford some minimal increase. But that minimal increase must go along with duty-free concession and land.
What is the minimal increase?
I don't know yet. That's to be worked out.
And so what range can we look at?
No, there's no range. We have our increase has to be with money that we have. Not
how much money do we have to give increase?
I don't know in the top of my head.
President of the University of Guyana Workers Union, Dr. Melissa Eiffel, then responded to the Vice-Chancellor. She said she was pleased to know that the Vice-Chancellor has recognized that UG staff and lecturers deserve better pay.
However, his proposal that we simply be granted a minimal increase along with duty-free concessions and a house lot, I am not quite sure how the Vice-Chancellor expects anyone to pay with this on a salary of $36,000 and $50,000. How are we going to pay for this car? How are we going to pay for this house lot? Clearly, it's an untenable situation. And I'm happy to know that the Vice-Chancellor recognizes that. We do not hold simply accountable the Vice-Chancellor. We also hold the council. We also hold the state. Because this is a national institution, UG is a national institution, and we absolutely have to prioritize the development of our young people.
Workers are demanding a 60% increase in wages and salary, and they vow to continue the struggle until they are given better pay. Reporting for Capital News, Royston.
In St. Lucia, leader of the parliamentary opposition, Dr. Gail Rigobert, wants Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony to move with haste to release the contents of the CARICOM impacts probe. Dr. Rigobert says it is time to make the findings public.
He's given his word that he will address the nation in early February on the findings of the impacts investigation into allegations of 12 extrajudicial killings. For some, it is not soon enough. Opposition leader Dr. Gail Rigobert says the results need to be released to relieve public anxiety.
Given that the report itself is very late in coming, I think the Prime Minister should move with haste and to fulfill his promise that very soon he will discuss with the public and agencies concerned the content and implications of that report. It affords him the opportunity to lift the dark cloud that hangs over the heads of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, the persons affected, and the nation at large.
The opposition leader says while she understands the sensitive nature of such a probe, its findings and potential implications, the release of the findings is necessary.
We can all appreciate that there are implications for all of us citizens and implications for the police force as it continues to provide the security and a safe environment to the people of this country. Understandably, there may be things in there that are highly sensitive, and the Prime Minister may therefore have to exercise his judgment. But certainly, one expects that there will be levels of disclosure, and in time, those persons concerned, and indeed the office of the Leader of the Opposition, will be afforded the opportunity to engage with the Prime Minister as to what this report means for us.
Members of the Police Welfare Association and the top brass of the police force have said they are anxious to learn of the findings and put this dark period behind them. They say the report will be important for the healing process within the police force. Alison Kentish, HDS News Force.
Internationally, Jordan has threatened a harsh response to the apparent killing of its pilot held captive by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. ISIL released a video online on Tuesday that purports to show First Lieutenant Moth al-Kasasba being burned alive. The video is reported to have been filmed a month ago. Al-Kasasba was captured by ISIL fighters in December when his F-16 crashed near Raqqa in Syria. We have more in this report.
It's the news Jordanians have been dreading. Mu'adh al-Kasasbe, the Jordanian F-16 pilot who was captured by the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant last December, has been murdered. The government confirmed al-Kasasbe was killed on January 3rd, a month before a new video Al Jazeera will not show was attributed to ISIL on Tuesday. It showed al-Kasasbe being supposedly burnt alive. Jordan warned its response will be as grave as the anger of the Jordanian people, and its king cut short his visit to Washington, D.C.
With sadness and sorrow, we received the news about the martyrdom of our hero Maz al-Kasabi at the hands of the terrorist and cowardly Daesh, that criminal and deviant gang which is not related to our noble faith in any way. Our heroic pilot Maz died while defending his faith, homeland, and nation.
Riots broke out in Al-Karak, the southern province where al-Kasasbe hails from. People feel ISIL is trying to stir up violence and unrest in the country. In al-Kasasbe's tribal gathering center in Amman, relatives and fellow tribesmen were devastated at the news. They have been meeting here for days and hours on end, desperately waiting to hear any news about the fate of the pilot.
Of course we will respond harshly. Jordan will retaliate. We will not remain silent.
And some who were questioning Jordan's role in the international coalition against ISIL now have answers.
I absolutely support Jordan's role in the coalition against ISIL. Before, I didn't encourage it. Now ISIL has become our problem, and it's imperative for Jordan to stay in the coalition in order to prove that Mu'adh's blood was not shed in vain.
Contrary to the usual beheadings of hostages attributed to ISIL, al-Kasasbe is the first hostage the group burnt alive, and this has enraged people here. Jordanians are angry not only because Al-Kasasbeh was murdered, but also because they feel manipulated by ISIL. The group had demanded the release of Iraqi would-be suicide bomber Sajid al-Rishawi, and Jordan was willing to negotiate an exchange deal. But ISIL demanded al-Rishawi's release after it had already killed Al-Kasasbeh. Now there are expectations al-Rishawi and other prisoners on death row who are convicted on terrorism charges will likely be executed in retaliation. The Al-Kasasbeh ordeal has ended badly for Jordan, but the hope is that more people will support the government in its fight against the Islamic State. Nisreen Al-Shamaili, Al Jazeera, Amman.
The federal government is sending investigators to the scene of Tuesday evening's deadly train crash north of New York City. 7 people died when a commuter train hit an SUV in Valhalla, New York.
Railroad crossing gates are expected to be one part of the investigation as federal officials look into Tuesday evening's deadly train crash in Valhalla, New York. 7 people died when a crowded commuter train slammed into an SUV in the small town north of New York City. Authorities say the Jeep Cherokee got caught between railroad crossing gates.
Well, what appears to have happened is a car was stopped on the tracks. It was hit by the train.
The driver of the vehicle and 6 people on the train were killed. Officials say the impact was so powerful that the electrified third rail pierced the first train car, setting it on fire.
When I first saw was the glow of the fire down the road, and as I approached, I was in disbelief when I saw the fire was coming from a car that was completely engulfed. When I noticed the train was on fire as well, that's when I realized that this is probably the worst tragedy I've ever responded to.
Passengers in the front cars scrambled to escape, while people at the back of the train were told to evacuate minutes later. At least a dozen people were injured, including the train operator, 10 of them seriously. It isn't yet known how fast the train was going at the time of the crash, but officials say its limit is 60 miles an hour. Matt Small, The Associated Press.
Turning now to the weather, temperatures today will reach a high of 24 degrees Celsius as we experience partly sunny skies today with periods of brief passing showers, becoming mostly fair tonight with very low shower activity. Winds are east at 12 to 18 miles per hour and sunset is expected at 6:07 p.m. That wraps up ZIZ's Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for the details to these stories and more when we have our major news presentation. I have been your presenter, JD Keynes. Thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.